Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer.
Isa.
If you remember last year, we did a special Valentine's Day episode featuring some of our favorite romance love
Mm-hmm.
stories ever in cinema. And till this day, I still love most of those films. We have Before Sunrise trilogy or the Before trilogy in general is in particular my favorite. Of course, I think we all know Isa's favorite is Eternal Sunshine
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of the Spotless Mind. But since we already did the whole lovey-dovey films last year, we thought we'll go 180, do the exact opposite thing, and we'll cover some anti-Valentine's films where we sort of spotlight or celebrate the best films where, shall we say, romantic idealism goes painfully awry
Mm.
in a multitude of ways. We'll be talking about Blue Valentine, which is, I think, the most painful or heart wrenching of the four, alongside a more recent entry by Noah Baumbach called Marriage Story. We'll also be talking about The Lobster, which is a sci fi fantasy take on it, as well as a millennial classic, I would say. Closer,
Mm.
right at the end to cap it off. Before we begin, besides the four titles that I just mentioned, do you have like any honorable mentions about some of your favorite anti-Valentine or anti-romance films?
Just like you mentioned recently, Revolutionary Road, I think is one of them. Um,
Particularly if you pair it up with Titanic, it's perfect.
yeah. If you imagine it in a case where Jack survives, right, and they take on whole new
Hmm.
names. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that whole idea of continuing that story for sure.
Hmm.
But just seeing Leo and Kate like on the screen again working together in a very very different context is a
Yep.
different kind of emotion. I think they're at the point where like they've grown as actors and all of that, and just kind of like
Mm.
still have an amazing on-screen chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and to see
Definitely.
that kind of all go to shit is both amazing and terrifying at the same time.
Yes, I have to agree. I have a couple of honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen them already. I think the first one you've definitely seen. It
Mm.
is David Fincher's Gone Girl,
Oh yeah.
which is great. It is a
Yes.
thriller, more fun version of the four films that we're talking about here,
Yeah.
with one of the best midway point
Mm-hmm,
twists that
mm-hmm.
you'll probably see in any film.
Oh yeah.
If you've not read Gillian Flynn's book Gone Girl or watched David Fincher's 2014 adaptation starring Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, boy, you really should, because it is such a great portrait of a perfect life and marriage that crumbles in the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
My other recommendation is something I've already talked about on Genre Equality. It is a movie called Midsommar
Oh yeah.
by Ari Aster, who did Hereditary. It is a great breakup horror, disguised as a cult folk horror. But really, it is about this poor girl played by Florence Pugh,
Mm-hmm.
who finally gets to, uh, I suppose, put her asshole boyfriend in his place right at the end of it.
Oh yeah.
And she feels so accepted by the community. It is a really uplifting ending for such a macabre story. But yeah, I really love Midsommar. Have you seen Midsommar?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Nice. Okay, yeah, it's one of my favorite like breakup anti Valentine's Day stories as well.
Mm. Would you consider the Depression trilogy, as in Lars von Trier's Antichrist, Melancholia, and Nymphomaniac, to fit in a similar category to what we're talking about?
Sure, yes, but I think that trilogy also covers so much more
Mm.
than anti-romance that it's like hard to pigeonhole it into that lah. But yes, yeah, that element of it is very strong in the Depression
Yeah.
trilogy as well.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Last one, Troy, like it tackles a lot of stuff, and it in those three dense films with a lot of themes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely fits in this vibe. I think also if you choose to include it lah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
For sure. Do you
nice.
have any else?
What is okay? This is one that is supposed to be romantic,
Yeah.
but it is so nauseating that I think it also works as an anti-Valentine's Day film.
Oh.
500 Days of Summer.
Yes. Yes. We had a conversation about this fairly recently, right? Where we were talking about just like the popularity of 500 Days of Summer when it came out and how we
Mm,
felt a lot of people were kind of like missing the point.
yes.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, because I think like if you watch it in this day and age, that would definitely ring much differently. Uh,
Hmm.
especially if you watched it when you were like fairly young in your early 20s or your late teens.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I think even back when I watched it in, I suppose I was in poly. I didn't
Mhm.
like it then. Still don't like it now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it works for anyone of any age because it's such a terrible film, and like I don't like the temper trap. Also,
Yeah.
um, I think one of our if you live in Singapore and we went to the first laneway, I think most of you probably left after Tame Impala to when Temper Trap closed. Yeah, like I just can't stand Temper Trap. I can't stand this film. It is the ultimate. You know when people make fun of hipsters,
Hmm.
500 Days of Summer is the validation lah of like people who make fun of hipsters.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's delve into the four films here. As we mentioned, let's begin with Blue Valentine, which is directed by Derek Ciafrance. It is a relationship drama that conducts this very, I would say, harsh and unblinking dissection of this doomed marriage between Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. Ryan Gosling plays this kind of heavy drinking slacker, much too kind of comfortable with his lack of ambition,
Hmm.
and Michelle Williams is a practical wife who comes to the bitter realization that she needs to grow old with a man, not a man child. No matter like how impishly charming Ryan Gosling can be,
Yeah.
it is an emotionally claustrophobic drama that is played with frayed nerves and very raw emotions, and it serves as an unrelenting glimpse into relationship hell. It could easily have devolved into, I think, sweaty, pretentious melodrama or something like that,
Hmm.
if not for the amazing actors at the helm
Yeah.
of the material. I think in one of her long string of astonishingly uh, frightening, committed performances. Michelle Williams,
Yes.
I mean, Venom aside, like, has just had like a long string of these type of roles. Right? Particularly, we talked about her in Brokeback Mountain as well,
Hmm.
right?
Yep, we did.
She totally loses herself in this. Speaking of losers, like Ryan Gosling is such an amiable loser. That you kind of grew empathetic with his rudderless existence as well. But she is unable to look past his rudderless existence and kind of tires of waiting for Ryan Gosling, the person she married, to grow
Hmm.
up, and for Gosling, Michelle Williams is his soulmate.
Yeah.
He's everything, and for Williams, Gosling is good enough until he isn't. And that imbalance proves fatal as the couple's relationship reaches this debilitating endgame as we see in the film.
Hmm.
And Cian France cuts back and forth between the agonizing finale and the dreamy romantic beginning to devastating emotional effect. You've recently rewatched Blue Valentine, a film I haven't seen
Oh
since
God. Yeah.
the 2010s. But yeah, since you have a fresher take on it, what do you think about Blue Valentine?
It was a hard rewatch. I'm not gonna lie. I think the first time round I caught it. It was I caught it, and then I remember hearing the story about a friend of mine who decided to bring a girl on their first date.
Oh, terrible idea.
Yeah, and he decided that Blue Valentine, sure, right? Valentine's Day. It was a Valentine's date,
Mm.
by the way. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, and yeah, so they didn't last very long. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, of course.
But yes, I was thinking, okay, on rewatch. First of all, still was painful. And
Mm.
maybe with like kind of greater understanding to the thematic kind of like discussions that the film is trying to have, right? Just about like the idea of like an identity that is connected to with the person that you're with, right? And the whole
Hmm.
idea that there has to be some sort of like shared self-actualization that needs to take place, otherwise there's
Yes.
there's kind of like no growth,
Hmm.
and this whole idea that at, at at the end of the day, like if he still loves you as much as he did when he first
Hmm.
met you, is that enough, right? Because it does feel like Dean's character, by and large, has not changed. Like his feelings have not changed for her, and all of that, despite the circumstances having changed around them.
Mm-hmm.
But is it really, is it enough, right? Is love enough in those cases, when we're talking
Mm.
about two human beings who are evolving as time passes? Um,
Yep.
that was one of my first thoughts. The other one, which I was contemplating about, like the non-linear narrative that we're kind
Mm.
of going through, right? With fantastic like cut flashbacks that counterpoint the parts where we currently find the couple at, or at least in the future, at least.
Mm. Very reminiscent of Eternal Sunshine, actually.
Yes, yes. But I feel like the kind of point counterpoint that goes on in Blue Valentine has additional dramatic and emotional impact that
Mm-hmm.
would feel very different, I think, if it was told in a chronological fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if it would necessarily have hit very differently, right? If we
Mm-hmm.
were to get a version that was cut in chronological order,
Mm-hmm.
having this kind of like constant in your face, like this is what it used to be like. They had their troubles, but it was sweet and all was good, and then immediately cutting to like this skeezy ass motel room, right, where they're just
Mm.
working shit out in a myriad of ways, and obviously it's not working. Like, I'm not sure which one would have greater emotional impact if we got this
Mm-hmm.
alternate version of it. But as
Mm.
it stands, as it is, right, it is hard to swallow and kind of
Mm.
hard to stomach, as that goes on.
Yeah, I have a feeling that if it was played linearly, it will be similar to the effect that Memento had if it was played linearly. I think
Ooh,
the power comes from the
yeah,
juxtaposition.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Oh, yeah, Blue Valentine still to this day is one of those movies that I don't think I'm ever going to seek out to watch or intentionally go
Mm.
out of my way to watch, but it still stands up
Yep.
one of the best films I've seen, right? When it comes to like thematically what it's trying to explore, the idea
Mm-hmm.
of love is not enough, and love kind of gone wrong, as
Mm-hmm.
is all kind of what we're discussing today. Uh,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
for sure, like one of the sharpest, I think, in terms of how the point is trying to make.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like this is one of Ryan Gosling's best performances, actually, because I
Mm.
feel like in recent times, not in his whole filmography, but Ryan Gosling has sort of leaned into his drive persona.
Oh yeah.
There's taciturn performances that he's been giving in, that Neil Armstrong astronaut movie. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
Our First Man, and a bunch of others.
Mhm.
La La Land is a great exception, though.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is one where he actually gets to show his range, and what he used to do.
Mm.
Unlike, like I said, First Man or Blade Runner 2049
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And Blue Valentine, like you said, is like this warped reverse highlight reel of the most painful moments in a dying relationship,
Mhm.
and it has the sting and sadness of real life,
Yeah.
in a sense that it doesn't feel overly contrived or dramatic in a fictional sense.
Yeah.
The effect is powerful, and quite overwhelming, and but even at its most intense, Blue Valentine doesn't quite devolve into a melodrama.
No.
And I think the structure allows the director to contrast Cindy and Dean's tortured present day
Mhm.
love-making sessions with those of better times when they shared, ecstasies, I guess, freely and openly.
Yeah.
Unlike this private one in this skeezy motel room, as you said,
Mhm.
I love the room space. I love like the claustrophobic nature of
Yeah.
it. Um, I think the passion between the two actors is quite. I mean, the chemistry is insane. It's like incandescent. But
Yeah.
like even in the best of time, I think the director finds this little seeds of destruction even in
Mhm.
their good
Mhm.
moments,
Mhm.
and how it will blossom, or I suppose blossom is the wrong word, or how it will grow into this destructiveness at the end.
Yeah.
I think I like that they showed Dean as this devoted father and husband, but also his chronic immaturity and lack of ambition is apparent
Yes.
from like the beginning of the relationship,
Mhm.
and Cindy just chooses to look past it, just as she does with the marital discord within her own family.
Mhm.
And I think because Blue Valentine announces itself as a breakup movie from the start,
Yeah.
the most tender and happy moments between Cindy and Dean tend to be among the most devastating as well. Because with a poignance, that this happy moments don't last, and breakups naturally bring a couple's romantic history rushing to the fore, and the mind plays back the ugly fights and missteps, to say nothing of the sweetest memories. But in showing us that history as it accumulates, Cian France gives the film a heartbreaking resonance. And
Yeah.
yeah, Blue Valentine's setting in the past and in the present, or it sets this course for a collision, and you feel the full weight of its impact. Any other thoughts on Blue Valentine?
Yeah.
It's a film I love, but like you said, like I won't probably rewatch it anytime soon.
It's it is fascinating how they decide to split the visual difference between like pre-marriage and post-marriage, right? Shot
Hmm.
on two completely. I think they were using like Super 8s before marriage, and then they were using like reds after. So you have this like kind of very soft kind of like feel to it, with very kind of like saturated color palettes that feel very rich and warm and inviting. And then cut into the present day where the lighting completely changes with the use of a lot of like artificial lights. Um,
Yes.
and a lot of sharpness to the image that's there, sort of bringing it into like this hyper real presence, where the camera
Mm,
is an additional lens that focuses you on the conflict that you see playing out. I thought that
yep.
was incredibly smart, and of course at the same time like um a very telling kind of like visual lead for the audience as you kind of go along, right? I think that was something I didn't notice on my first watch when I watched it in the
Mm,
cinemas.
yeah.
Rewatching it, however, like that became like a little more clear. Maybe just because watching it at home and having like a HD screen and all of that does add to that feeling.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's something I don't think it necessarily popped out at me the first time I watched it. Maybe because I was also like kind of like not emotionally prepared for what I was watching.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. And on another note, since we're talking about Gosling and we're talking about like honorable mentions for anti-Valentine's movie, I think
Mm,
Lars and the Real Girl, which just popped up in
yes.
my head,
Mm.
I would probably put it under this category as well.
Yes, yes, that's a great honorable mention. Another one of Ryan Gosling. One of his best performances, I would
I
say, also
agree.
in Last and the Real
Hmm.
Girl. Very underseen and underrated film that never quite got any sort of like Oscar attention or whatnot.
Yeah.
Outside of the art house, community, lah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I fucking love Last and the Real
Me
Girl.
too.
Yeah, Blue Valentine is painful watch. You can rent it on iTunes and Amazon and stuff like that. It is whew, a tough one, but I think one of the best ones that we're talking about. Especially in terms of performance
Yeah.
and in terms of
Yeah,
script.
for sure.
It is quite. It has this NC-17 rating, which I don't think it deserves.
Just for that
Um,
one scene, right?
yeah,
If I
just for
remember
that one
correctly.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one scene has sort of like torpedoed the reputation of this film. And this is a good way to seg into the next film, Marriage Story, because I feel that Blue Valentine didn't have to cope with this. It wasn't in the social media era,
Yeah.
but Marriage Story had to cope with a social media era.
Hmm.
And the memification of one particular climactic scene in Marriage Story portrayed the film as something that it is not.
Yeah.
The scene, obviously the scene of Adam Driver screaming, which has been memed to great effect. And don't get me wrong, like I love that meme. It's funny, particularly because of all the Star Wars memes that came out of it as
Yeah.
well. But that is not what the film is. It
No.
is not Blue Valentine. It is not two people screaming at each other the whole time. It is something. It is one scene. It is 2 minutes in a 2 hour film,
Hmm.
and it doesn't represent what the film is. Marriage Story to me, when it first came out, I'm a big fan of Noah Baumbach because I feel like of all the writers that pretend to write conversational dialogue, Noah Baumbach
Yeah.
does it the best. He kind of pioneered what is called mumblecore, not the rap mumblecore, but back in the early 2000s with the Squid and the Whale
Yeah.
and Francis Ha and things like that. He pioneered a style of dialogue called mumblecore with a lot of us and ums and ahs, and that kind of thing. Very naturalistic dialogue.
Yeah.
And Marriage Story is the Noah Baumbach movie that I've been waiting for a long time. It's better than good. It is more than just accomplished.
Hmm.
After 10 films over like 25 years of filmmaking, I think at long last, Baumbach's breakthrough into the dramatic realm is, at once funny and scalding and stirring and built around two bravura performances from
Mm.
two great actors that are incredibly sharp and incredibly stirring. And just very human. It's the work of a major film artist finally coming to his own, and especially into the mainstream. One
Yeah.
who shows that he can capture life in all its emotional detail and complexity, and in the process make a piercing statement about how our society works now. And the movie is a drama of divorce, of course, and when it's over, you may feel like you know the lives it's about as well as you know your own.
Mm.
Yet, Marriage Story isn't just about the tale of a marital breakdown and its aftermath. It's a film about divorce, how it operates, what it means, the legal red tape around it, the larger consequences around it.
Yeah.
I think TV in particular like confronts this kind of thing, but it's in a very melodramatic, unrealistic way. This movie is not though. It is more similar to a film like Kramer vs. Kramer,
Oh
which is
yeah.
also a great honorable mention actually. Since I'm on that route, yeah, if you haven't seen Kramer vs. Kramer, you should watch it. It's on Netflix actually. And Marriage Story sees the end of marriage as both a cause of mourning and bittersweet comedy. The thing is, the relationship between the two protagonists, just because they're divorced doesn't mean that the relationship is ending. The relationship is changing.
Yeah.
And this is a movie about the evolution of that relationship. And it is something to behold. And to get a story like this right requires a sense of, I guess, the comical and the absurd, which Noah Baumbach is known for, alongside the devastating, and Marriage Story delivers.
Mm.
It plays out like this duet, one that we're just happening to catch at the moment, where the key is changing, and the discord quite uh, hasn't quite resolved, and the movie begins with one of the most like touching monologues I've ever heard. Where we see the two sides of what seems like a happy marriage.
Yeah.
Charlie, played by Adam Driver, is listing out all the things that he loves about Nicole, played by Scarlett Johansson, and Nicole is returning the favor. Like it's very sweet, and it's clear that the two still think highly of each other despite the dissolution of their marriage.
Hmm.
Except, and then you learn that they're in a marriage counselor's office, and Nicole is so pissed off at Charlie that she doesn't even want to read her list out loud, which is gripped in her tightening hands, right? And nothing in particular, it as it transpires, is ripping Charlie and Nicole apart. We don't understand.
Yeah.
But they've almost broken up before. Friends in their theater group gossip amongst themselves about whether the split will stick this time. The thing is, it will. And that's what I love about this film. It's not about a relationship ending bitterly. It is a bittersweet evolution of a relationship
Hmm.
from marriage to maybe friends, as amicable as a divorce can be, because I think like a lot of divorces are portrayed as like this kind of bitter shouting
Yeah.
matches. But Charlie and his wife don't think of each other as villainous,
Mm.
like at all,
Hmm.
and neither does the film. And it's great. It sounds to me like there's a bit of autobiographical nature in this,
Yeah.
just because it feels so real, and it must have, I think. Yeah. What do you think about Marriage Story?
Uh, Before I get to that, didn't
Yep.
Bombach kind of like deal with his own parents' divorce in Squid and the
And
Whale?
Will, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yep, absolutely.
this isn't like untreaded territory for him necessarily
Mm-hmm.
either. Oh man, Marriage Story. As a child of divorce myself, uh,
Mm.
this was hard to watch. Like there were moments in time where uh, even though, oh man, what's the kid's name necessarily?
I forgot, but yeah,
Yeah,
go on. We know who you're talking
yeah.
about.
Actually, he doesn't actually have a name. I think. Oh, Henry. Yes, that's right.
Henry. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I don't know if Henry kind of picks out, and like we never kind of get his point of view. He's there. He helps move the plot along certainly, right? But they're just like
Mm.
these little things that you kind of pick up. I think as a kid, right? In the household of a marriage that is on its last legs. And both Driver and Johansson are such amazing actors. And just the kind of nuance that they bring here. And then, in addition to that, the fact that it's grounded in the fact that they work together at a theater company, and that Johansson's character Nicole is a former kind of teen star turned theater actress.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of restraint, I think, is what impresses me the most. Right? There are
Yep.
moments when it feels like it could devolve into a shouting match. There are moments it feels like just one of them could burst into tears, and then it's going to be melodramatic from there. I don't think we ever get that necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the movie is better for that because a lot of the time like circumstantially, you're not going to be able to like do that in real life, which makes it feel like, more natural, more human, more true to form of what a
Mm.
reality looks like, which also at the same time makes it extremely painful to watch,
Yep.
as it kind of taps on like whatever past trauma that we might have had with dying relationships and so on. So
Mm.
that's kind of like the first thing. It is an incredible. Uh, I love the way Bombok steps out of the way of the actors and the character
Mm-hmm.
work that they are doing on screen. I feel like both Nicole and Charlie get a lot of time to breathe. Definitely, I do feel like Nicole does get the lion's share of the screen time for sure,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of unsurprising. You need to like kind of adopt a single, kind of like main story there. Also, shout out to Laura
Mm.
Dern again, another kind of like amazing supporting role
Mm.
as Nora. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she was nominated twice that year. For one for her role in Little Women, and one for her role here.
Yeah.
One of the few instances where an actress was nominated twice for Best Supporting Actress in the same category.
Mm,
It's insane.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's Laura Dern, right? Love her to death.
Mm-hmm.
So good. But I was just kind of thinking like, especially the first time I watched this through, when it first came out, like how much of my own personal emotions were shaped by not so much the story of these two, go soon to be ex-husband and wife, right? Kind of going through that and negotiating and navigating that. But how much my
Mm-hmm.
emotional journey watching this movie was shaped by the legality of it, right? Like when the lawyers come into
Mm.
play and the things that kind of play out within the courtroom and then the custody fight and all of that. Like I'm so riled up by those things, and then suddenly counterpointed by the fact that they
Mm.
have this moment where like this is ridiculous, let's sit down, right?
Mm.
And the tone of that conversation is so vastly different that it changes
Mm.
everything immediately, and I mean, I don't know if it's like a commentary necessarily on like how the culture surrounding divorce or the legal system surrounding divorce is automatically antagonistic from
Mm.
it.
I think the real villains of the film are not Charlie or Nicole.
Yeah.
It is the industry of
Yeah.
divorce.
Yeah. Because it feels a lot that way, right? Like we get
Yeah.
like Charlie's first lawyer, I can't remember his name, the
Mm-hmm.
older chap, like
Yeah.
his approach seems like that's more in line with what the couple wants, number one, or at
Yeah.
least it seems that way. And the his entire goal to kind of like de-escalate and find common ground, and kind of
Mm.
resolve the conflict in a way that doesn't require them to go through all the ridiculous kind of character assassinations that we see later on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, really felt more right, but also at the same time extremely out of place.
Yeah.
Because of the direction that just in general this conflict was going to take place in the legal
Mm-hmm.
sphere.
Yep.
So I mean, like on top of all of the amazing kind of like character work and just like examining and re-examining, renegotiating who you are as people and what your relationship is with a child in the mix, right? Then you have this a whole other layer of commentary and just like playing out the dramatic fashion in which divorce happens and how that
Mm-hmm.
shapes how we feel, despite the fact that it's not necessarily what the people involved want or necessarily feel as well.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Uh, it was going so well until the lawyers got involved, lah. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's the point of the film. As you mentioned earlier on, Charlie is unlike Nicole. Charlie is this theater director,
Yeah.
right, and kind of a true New Yorker at heart. And his latest play is transferring to Broadway. And Nicole was the star. She was this former indie girl before, and now she's transferred to theater.
Mm,
And she is the star of Charlie's new play. And although they were married for years, she's now moving from their home of New York to her hometown of LA to shoot a pilot.
yeah.
She's bringing their 8-year-old son with her, and though that could have just been this temporary stay, show business couples sort of do the bi-coastal thing all the time. But her decision to finally go sort of pushes some long simmering problems to boil over. I think the New York Los Angeles divide is like this handy American metaphor for the ensuing divorce.
Yeah.
They're two cities that aren't really all that different. They're filled with people who have similar
Hmm.
aspirations and a common language and shared ties and history. But New Yorkers and Angelinos, I guess, can't stand each other for some reason with very little provocation.
Yeah.
Um, and the same is true for Charlie and Nicole, who go through conversations with relatives and lawyers, and unpack all the reasons that they both got together and fell apart. There's the meetings with the lawyers who are far more combative
Hmm.
than Charlie and Nicole are, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and home visits to determine custody, and the family members who side with one another, and the battles over who will live where and when, who gets to take what, the shape of what life looks like.
Yeah.
That begins to complicate everything also. And most of the comedy comes courtesy of these kind of um, Kafkaesque machinations of the divorce industry, the divorce industry.
Yeah.
And disentangling two lives requires a different kind of enmeshment in the legal and financial system that is designed to suck at them and to suck at their bank accounts
Hmm.
and to dry and dissolve their love, which still remains although they're getting divorced.
Yeah.
It is a system focused on winning, not on fairness. But nobody wins in a divorce, just like nobody wins in a wedding. It's both of you are supposed to win, right? Charlie and Nicole are both right about each other's faults. That's the key. And both are right about each other's good traits
Hmm.
and bad traits.
Hmm.
In the middle of their split is still the core of their connection. If not as spouses, then still as partners, at least, of raising Henry,
Yeah.
right? They're partners of a kind. In that way, Marriage Story is almost authentic to a painful fault. Like,
Yeah.
most of anyone who's ever been in a relationship of any length will find themselves wondering at some point in Marriage Story how Noah Baumbach got a hold of their like inner monologue.
Yeah.
In other movies like The Squid and the Whale and Margot at the Wedding, he's often presented the complications of marriages and divorces and shifting family dynamics as a rueful part of
Yeah.
living, part of,
Hmm.
I guess, the dark comedy of existence.
Hmm.
And here he opens up the wounds that relationships leave for our examination, and perhaps why that's why like Driver and Johansson's scenes together are among the film's most heartbreaking.
Mm.
That moment when someone says something they can never take back is gutting, but it's in their individual scenes
Yeah.
that you can actually get a sense of how powerfully they're performing with these ripples of emotion and energy, revealing conflicts going on beneath the words. They're still just just finding to uh, they're just trying to narrate or reframe their lives according to their words.
Hmm.
And when you join your life to someone else, they become a part of you too. And figuring out uh, who you are in the aftermath requires looking back and understanding the past in a new way.
Yeah.
And as the story, this quote unquote marriage story, like resolves into its next phase, I think both Charlie and Nicole have scenes involving musical performances, both of which backwards look at love and its abrasions. And the numbers are very different, but they're kind of from the same show. So Marriage Story is like, very tunefully makes its points in those musical
Yeah.
sequences. Charlie and Nicole's futures aren't on the same path, but they're still parallel. And not only because they have a son to raise together, but because they still have this lingering respect for each other, at
Mm.
least.
Mm.
For a while, it seems as if their relationship will only end in flames, much like Blue Valentine. But it's just a phase in their marriage, and what just one more song in this in the show. It's great. It's the most honest representation of, I think, a divorce I've seen.
Yeah.
Perhaps more honest than even Blue Valentine or other films of this ilk, just because it's so real.
Hmm.
There's a lot of Noah Baumbach in here, especially the autobiographical nature of it, especially the way that he doesn't paint his ex partner as a villain,
Yeah.
um, but rather sees their good traits and bad traits and his own faults and his own good traits. Makes this a very even-handed film that is so much more than the meme
Oh yeah,
suggests.
for sure.
Yeah,
The meme
yeah.
certainly does this movie an injustice for anyone who
Mhm.
doesn't eventually go to watch it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any final thoughts about Marriage Story and its
Oh.
its amazingness before we move on?
I think like this is one of those things, right, that is on Netflix that nobody watches, and I'm wondering why, right?
Mm,
Because we get a ton of trash on Netflix, like we've complained 1,000 times before. I know
yep.
necessarily people don't. go on Netflix to have a like emotional trip like you get with Marriage Story.
Hmm.
But ultimately the film is about its own kind of hope, right? Like the hope of like moving on and refinding yourself, and then there being common ground after a traumatic separation, right?
Mm.
And there is good in that, I think. Well, at least there
Hmm.
is for me personally. So, if you guys haven't caught Marriage Story and you can steal yourself for it, if you're alone this Valentine's Day, then it's on
Yeah.
Netflix. It's readily within reach.
Yes, yes, definitely. It is one of the best films that peels back the truth about marriage layer by layer,
Yeah.
and it's also about the system of divorce and how it operates. And it's just this one big messed up shit show,
Hmm.
uh, and it's also powerfully subtle. And as flawed as the divorce process is, it becomes the vehicle through which Charlie and Nicole confront the underlying reality of their marriage.
Yeah.
Bombuk's screenplay is as brilliant as it's ever been. Never falters, never hits the wrong note. He has come up with a smart, witty, saddened, and very internally searching characters whose ability to articulate their feelings is never less than lifelike.
Mm.
And he writes scenes that are just so verbally truthful. The supporting actors are all great, as we mentioned, like Laura Dern especially is a standout.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really, really truthful film that you should go out of your way to watch. And one of 2020's best releases,
Mm.
2019's best releases. One of Adam Driver's best
Oh
performances
yeah,
as
for
well.
sure.
For sure, I think this is an easy highlight for Adam Driver. For Scarjo, who has a much longer filmography,
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is the best performance, but
Uh
one of her many best
I
performances.
think this performance is unique though within her filmography. I don't
Yep.
yeah, I don't quite remember anything quite like it. So
Mhm.
it's great to see like she's adding even more range to already impressive like career.
Yes, yes, definitely. What would you say is her best performance?
Ooh, that's kind of rough. Under the Skin probably.
Yeah, Under the Skin is probably one of her most restrained,
Mm.
but at the same time effective performances, doing a lot with very
Yeah.
little, similar to what she did in her big breakout performance in Lost in Translation.
Mhm. Mhm.
Go for Pearl Earring, I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
quite a similar thing that she did
Yeah.
there. Lots of other great stuff like that she's did. If you've not seen Ghost World, it's really good as well. Although she's not the star in it,
Yeah.
lah. But that's the first time I saw her. She's great in Match Point, Vicky Cristina Barcelona,
Oh yes.
um, her, just as her voice
Mhm.
is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, lots of good. So she had a great performance in Jojo Rabbit as well.
Yeah.
So if you only know her as like Black Widow, I think you should delve into her filmography, like, because she's done a lot of really, really good things
Yeah.
as well,
Kind of.
outside of the superhero realm, I
Mhm.
guess.
Mhm. Mhm.
Next up, let's move on to something a little lighter. It is a sci-fi satire comedy. It is a quote-unquote love story set in the near future where single people, according to the rules of their city,
Yeah.
are arrested and transferred to the hotel. There, once in the hotel, they are obliged to find a matching mate in 45 days. If they fail, they are transformed into an animal of their choosing and released into the woods.
Mhm.
Wild concept. It follows a desperate man as he escapes from the hotel to the woods where the quote unquote loners live, and falls in love with one of the loners, one of the leaders of the loners, although it's against their rules. This is by one of my favorite 21st century auteurs, Yorgos
Yeah.
Lanthimos, who has the most unique style I've ever seen since Charlie Kaufman, actually.
Mhm.
He has such a very unique, I can't even describe it. I've not seen anything like it. I can't equate it to any director that has come in the past or any director that is in the present.
Yeah.
Yorgos Lanthimos is his own thing. He has his own style of writing and dialogue and shooting things that just is so bizarre and weird and singular. This is the best rom com about Valentine's
Mm.
that you can find because of its messaging underneath.
Yeah.
This whole society forces you uh, um, to a to monogamy or couplehood or coupledom.
Mhm.
And yeah, like dating is plenty complicated as things stand. But like suppose this film like makes it even more bizarre and complex.
Yeah.
And Colin Farrell is great in this. And this is one of the weirdest things that Colin Farrell has ever done.
Yes.
And yeah, you should definitely go see it. Yeah, how long has it been since you've seen The Lobster? What are your memories of it?
Okay. Oh man. I remember being obsessed with the poster, right?
Mm,
Like just the design of it was something that like I think in 2015 it kind of like popped a fair bit for
yeah.
me, and that immediately got me interesting. And then on top of that, the premise was fascinating, right? Before I got into that, I do remember the first time that I watched it, and
Mm-hmm.
again, kind of like rewatching it for us to talk today. Just the amount of disbelief that you are expected to suspend for a given movie, like this definitely ranks up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every time you said, okay, sure, I can accept that as like conceptually, right? Like conceptually, intellectually, I can accept that as part of the premise of the movie. And then something else absurd gets added to that. And then something else absurd gets added on top of that. And then something else absurd also gets added on top of that. And it reaches to
Mm-hmm.
the point whereby, like, it's a whole bunch of absurd rules that you are slowly introduced to that gives you the feeling of like you kind of reach the point whereby you are all in, right? It's like sure,
Yeah.
right? I've committed this much, I've suspended this much disbelief, right? Sure, do whatever. I don't care anymore. Just tell me how this ends. Necessarily. Uh
Yes, it also it's like real life,
yeah,
like you're born and you're introduced into all these seemingly absurd rules, and by the end, they stop being absurd to you.
yeah,
You just buy into it. You just buy into what society wants you to buy
yeah,
into.
right. And like all the way to the end of the story, right? And guys, not necessarily spoiler information. This has been out since 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the way up to the end, right? Like being free of all that, having run away from all of that, like there are still things that these characters don't it doesn't occur to them that it's absurd, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself makes The Lobster such a fascinating movie just because it asks so much from the audience,
Yeah.
that is kind of crazy, you know.
Yes.
I remember mentioning to you, right, when we were kind of discussing the rundown for this particular episode about how
Mm-hmm.
annoyed I get when I see people putting The Lobster as their favorite movie on their dating profiles,
Mm-hmm.
just because like it feels like like a fairly modern day tragedy for you to not quite understand what the movie is about or the point
Yeah.
that it's trying
Yeah.
to make, right? To see it on someone's Tinder
Mm.
profile, I'm just like, oh dear, oh you poor thing. Uh,
Yeah. It's like how all these guys love Fight Club lah.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, like Fight Club is a film about toxic masculinity, and it has somehow become the emblem for toxic masculine people
Yeah,
to celebrate themselves. It's weird,
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I never quite. I don't think when I watched The Lobster in 2015, like way before, like Tinder and dating apps became like a huge thing,
Hmm.
like that would become its eventual problem, that this kind of like indie very strange film, right, that is completely art house would be a thing on dating profiles. um
Hmm.
but yeah, I hope that some of these self-aware and ironic, but you never know with people.
Yes,
Yes, yeah,
I really loved I really love that David has so like bought into it that like he knows the drill because
yes,
his dog is his brother,
yes,
right? Like he knows the drill. This isn't like a Black Mirror or Twilight Zone situation where he's thrust into something and he doesn't know what's
oh
happening,
yeah,
right? Like he knows it, and everyone in the society is so like blasé and assumes like like that compatibility means like for like,
yeah,
right? So there's this guy played by Ben Whishaw who wants to attract a girl who gets nosebleeds, and then bangs his head against walls to make his own nosebleed. And
yeah,
there's a guy played by John C. Riley with a lisp who looks with a girl with a speech impediment. So like this whole idea that like for like is weird, and David briefly tries to ingratiate himself with this heartless woman by
oh
faking
yeah,
indifference to her.
hmm,
And although there is knowledge that things may not work out, David still does it anyway.
yeah,
And then David discovers this alternative of sorts, right? In the woods surrounding the hotel are like a lot of unusual animals,
yeah,
camels, ponies, flamingos, but also this revolutionary bunch of loner escapees. And for recreation, the hotel guests hunt them with tranquilizer darts. with each bagged loner getting the hunter an extra day of, I guess, beasthood avoidance.
Yeah.
And the loners who prize um, lonerlessness as strongly as the rest of society prices coupledom have their own secret set of rules,
Hmm.
which turn out to be just as peculiar and simultaneously funny and cruel as those of the society that they're rebelling
Yeah.
against. I think Yorgos Lanthimos is very, very fond of these weird, hermetically sealed satires like this, where logic is rigidly internal. You know, there is no like external reference for the logic. The logic that exists in this film is only in this film,
Yeah.
and the results of the following that logic are obviously strange. The Lobster is his first film in English, although I would highly recommend you catch his other films as well.
Hmm.
And it plays cleverly with the compatibility assumptions behind, say, single groups or online dating sites.
Yeah.
And I guess it's hard to tell um, how he feels about either idea, but he does, sharply deconstruct both of them.
Hmm.
It's one of the best, I guess, modern satires I've ever seen, and it has a concept so fresh and so original that it makes Black Mirror look like very derivative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Lobster came before Black Mirror, right? Let's see.
Actually, no, no. The first two seasons of Black Mirror were pre-Lobster. It came before the Netflix Black Mirror still.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What were your kind of like favorite kind of parts of the Lobster? Scene wise.
Um, my favorite parts, to be honest, it is weird, lah, but like my favorite part was the trying to understand what this world is because I didn't read the synopsis when I first watched
Yeah.
it. I watched this in the bandwagon office when I first was working there. So no idea what it was. So the whole process of trying to learn a new world and its rules is the best for me. And the way that Yorgos Lanthimos introduces this world in a very sort of like matter of fact fashion
Yeah.
with characters who are not, none of them are designed to be a proxy. There is no like, like Ellen Page's character in Inception,
Yeah.
right? Is your proxy to a weird world. And then everything is explained to her and therefore explained to the
Yeah.
audience. Like none of that happens here. You just have to like learn by inference.
Hmm.
And that is really like like broadly, like, that is my favorite part of the film. Like how it makes you work to
Oh
understand it.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't necessarily like something like that, but I particularly love it. I don't like being spoon fed things.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. I feel. But again, it is work, right?
Hmm.
And it takes some time to get there. But still, I love this film. There are a couple of scenes that like kind of always stand out to me. The strangeness of introducing the idea that masturbation is banned, but
Yep.
edging is compulsory is
Mm.
insane. It is insane to me where it is introduced within the film itself, right? And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
how it inserts itself into your consciousness as an audience member while trying to hold like the world building up to that point is kind
Yep.
of breaking. It's kind of like mind breaking. I'm just like, what? Seriously? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Let's see kind of where this goes. The choking on the olive scene is insane.
Mm.
And that stayed with me kind of for like a very very long time. Shout out to Olivia Colman, who yet
Also
again
great in this.
plays an amazing role as the hotel manager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like nuts. Love Olivia Colman. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. We actually like gone through this whole review without mentioning Raquel
yeah,
Weisz, who is also really, really great in this
yes,
as well.
yes.
Universally capable cast,
Mm,
but it's of course helmed or at least anchored by Colin Farrell, who
yeah,
as is similar to a lot of the performances that we've mentioned.
mm,
One of his best performances here as well.
yeah,
Probably the most unique film that Colin Farrell has ever been in.
yeah.
Certainly not the most unique film that Yorgos Lanthimos has done. If you think this is weird, like watch his other stuff. Like this is if anything, this is the gateway drug to Yorgos Lanthimos.
Oh yeah.
This is his Eternal Sunshine, I would say. Like to if you think like Eternal Sunshine is weird, like you haven't seen Charlie Kaufman.
Hmm.
This is a great entry point into Yorgos Lanthimos. Not for everyone,
Nope.
but for people who want something different and tired by the same old rom coms and everything else, The Lobster is for you. I almost wish I didn't have to give you the premise for the film and like
Yeah.
allow you to find out what it is, but for the purposes of the review, I had to.
Yeah.
Finally, let's go back to what I would say. is a millennial classic.
Mm.
It is particularly resonant for people in their 30s now because of when they saw it.
Yeah.
It is, boy, I rewatched this recently. It is not as good as I remember,
Yeah.
but I remember it like making a huge impression in my life. I think this is very similar to when we talked about Shutter, like
Mm.
how what we thought about it then versus what we think about it
Yeah.
now. But when it came out, it was so bitingly funny, and it felt like this honest look at modern relationships that I've never seen in cinema
Yeah.
before. Closer is essentially the story of four strangers, their chance meetings and instant attractions, and their casual betrayals of each other. It's a love quadrangle, essentially. And Mike Nichols' movie about four people who I guess richly deserve one another.
Mm.
They are fascinated by the game of love and seduced by the idea of seduction itself. They play at being sincere. They play at having truthful relationships, which are lies in almost every respect, except in their desire to sleep with each other.
Mhm.
All smart, or all four are smart and ferociously articulate, like adept at seemingly forthright and sincere verbal exchanges, even in their most shameless
Yeah.
deceptions. The truth, one says, without it, we're animals. Actually, truth causes them more troubles than it saves because they seem compelled to be most truthful about the ways in which they have been untruthful. There is this There's a difference between confessing you've cheated because you feel guilty and seek forgiveness and confessing it merely to cause pain.
Mhm.
And these four people want to cause pain. The movie stars in order of appearance are now big time blockbuster stars: Jude Law, Natalie Portman, Julia Roberts, and Clive Owens.
Mhm.
They all are great in this, and they play characters that they've never played before up until that point.
Yeah.
And this is a romance film that we've never seen on screen up until that point. And I think, as I guess, the Sopranos of this type of romance relationships m- films,
Yeah.
Sopranos wasn't perfect, but without the Sopranos, like, would we have The Wire or
Nope.
Breaking Bad and Mad Men and things like that? No. And I think The Closer like fulfills that role for me for anti-Valentine's
Yeah.
films.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. What do you think about Closer?
Yeah, so I started on rewatching this recently. Like Closer is something that I rewatched a lot, like especially in the
Mm-hmm.
year I'm gonna say like up to the early 2010s, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, someone say, "Oh, let's watch Closer," right? And yeah, still was very taken by that by and large. However, rewatching it this time round, I didn't make it through half the movie. First of all, because I
Yep.
realized I remember a lot of it, and I also realized that it isn't as amazing as I amazing,
Remember it to be
yeah,
right.
not as I don't even think amazing, like it didn't quite have the same sort of impact or resonance
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, right?
Yep.
The characters were a lot felt a lot more annoying,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not really sure why. That's something I think I still need to kind of process. I think like with age and having more life experiences, right, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to see it from the point of view, like essentially, very essentially, as good as the movie is and was when it came out, um, these are a bunch of assholes, very honestly. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think they're supposed to be annoying. We just didn't understand that when we were
Yeah,
younger.
yeah, right. Like there was a sort of, it could have been just the kind of like polished visual effect and aesthetic that it had with these like incredibly intelligent and beautiful people, just kind of going about their thing. But when you remove all of that sheen, right, the story in and of itself, like as fascinating as it was to us back then, and still is to some degree, the context of it changes as you get older, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas this does have the problem of glamorizing relationships, like the ones that they pursue and or destroy. um you know
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh, you know what, honestly, like I'm not sure I want this kind of drama even in my entertainment necessarily.
Yep.
But still, it has given us some iconic scenes, some iconic lines that
Mm-hmm.
people still quote to this day. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, if you pay attention to Hollywood's rom-coms,
Hmm.
the interaction between man and woman is all about love and companionship. The ideals of romance lah, is what Hollywood is kind of perpetuating on you.
Yeah.
Um, what Closer does, I suppose, better than the other three films, is subvert that philosophy. In Closer, romance is about power.
Hmm.
Um, Closer starts like a nice romantic drama with a couple of meet cutes,
Yeah.
um, that like it's, but it just rots, and it rots everything from the inside out. It isn't just the relationships that curdle, but the characters and their interactions become bitter and cynical. Sex is used frequently as tools in power struggles and one-upsmanship games, and like although the word love is mentioned a few
Hmm.
times, it has little place in this film. It is the ultimate anti-love film,
Yeah.
where emotions and weaknesses are exploited by others. With Closer, I think director Mike Nichols and screenwriter Patrick Marber, who I think adapted this from his play,
Hmm.
have ventured into some very, very twisted territory with their in terms of subverting the ideology of
Yeah.
love. It is very, very grim. Like on the surface, I guess Closer seems and like a story about two couples whose infidelities rip them apart, but really it's not. All of them are terrible people
Hmm.
who, as I mentioned, truly deserve each other. They are ugly on the inside as they are beautiful on the outside. Their betrayals and infidelities, all that just serves to prove what terrible people they are.
Yeah.
From a physical standpoint, Closer is not a violent film.
No.
From an emotional standpoint, it is a violent film. And Nichols doesn't like pull his punches. You will leave the theater shaken by its dialogue. Like the film is most notable for its frank dialogue,
Yeah.
right? There is plenty of profanity and a lot of interesting observations. These characters speak with a kind of vocabulary and style that is very heightened.
Mm.
It is not the naturalistic style that you'll find in a Noah Baumbach film. It
Yeah.
is more of closer to an Aaron Sorkin film.
Yeah.
It is very talky and in a smart way that calls attention to himself. Um, but you never feel like the characters are talking to hear their own words or fill up screen time. Like they are making points too.
Mm.
And nevertheless, those unaware of the story, it began its life as a play. You won't be surprised to learn this fact because it is very stagey,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
dialogue. Yet the rawness of the emotions, and this is where the actors play their part,
Hmm.
keep us from noticing how few sets there are, how stagey the dialogue is, how little quote unquote conventional action occurs. The film sort of loves turning the tables on everyone. The users become victims and vice versa. Innocence is corrupted, and corruption learns too late that there is no return path. Alice, who is like the most naive member of the
Yeah.
ensemble, despite being a stripper by profession, is hurt the most deeply, and that pain results in irrevocable change. Larry, who is a decent guy when the film starts, turns into a cold, calculating man,
Hmm.
having sex at least on two occasions to torment Dan. Like in the end, he wants to possess Anna not out of love, but because doing so means beating someone else.
Yeah.
But to paint Dan as guiltless as well is also unfair. He is a weasel, a very charming
Oh
weasel, but
yeah.
he's also an instigator, and he cheats without concern for repercussions. Dan is astounded when any of them actually impact him, when the consequences catch up.
Hmm.
Hannah is also fundamentally weak and dishonest, and she doles out and receives hurt in equal measure. Um, it is a terrible people, uh, boasted by phenomenal performances,
Yes.
and truly it is, besides the script, is the actors here who get to shine. And no one shines brighter here than Clive Owen. And I
Mm.
think this is one of his big breakout
Yeah.
roles. I think to this day still likes a bit of household recognition, and I don't quite understand why. Clive Owen is a great actor,
Yeah.
and he deserves like the Oscar buzz that he got from here, lah.
Yeah.
The ferocity with which he delivers his lines and the restless energy he imparts to Larry, and he is just electric in every scene that he's in. The two most riveting sequences here involve Owen and Natalie Portman.
Hmm.
One in an art gallery where they first meet, and the other in a strip club where he has all the money, but she has the power and uses it.
Yeah.
I think this is Portman's first truly adult role
Uh,
at this
yeah.
point, because if you keep in mind, um, I suppose her first truly adult role was as a child in Leon the Professional,
Hmm.
but as an adult, post Queen
Yeah.
Amidala, this is her first adult role, and it is very, very good. And she did a lot to shed her Queen Amidala uh, uh, pigeonhole here.
Mm.
And the stink around the prequels, shall we say, was largely forgotten after she did this. Yeah, this is great, and it's a great essays about uh, four different character studies about people who undergo a personality transformation,
Yeah,
from okay to like fairly terrible people. And there's a rawness and courage to all of their performances that are great, and those are the things that still stand out today, even though our memories of it are probably hold it in a brighter light than it should have
yeah,
been, I
absolutely,
guess. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I read that Owen actually played Dan's role in the play,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
And then he's
yeah.
kind of swapped that. So like that feels even more impressive.
Hmm.
Just one. Yeah, you're right. Clive Owen doesn't get enough love for sure. I also
Yeah, I don't understand what went wrong with him. He's handsome, he's tall, I
he's got an
what's wrong? Yeah.
amazing voice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of time when I say Clive Owen, right, people are like, oh, the guy in Closer, or oh, like he's like the guy in Sin City as the
Hmm.
detective thing, but he doesn't get recognition for anything outside of that. Um,
His best film, Children of Men, is like so underseen. It's
yeah,
quite sad, actually.
which
Yeah.
which we have we talked about Children Man? We've mentioned Children Man, but we haven't discussed it at length.
We talk about it a lot. The last time I mentioned Children of Men was talking about Hawkeye in the episode 3 scene with the car
Yeah.
chase. Was obviously inspired by Children of Men. Oh no, okay, this is a weird segue, lah. But to digress from this is a Clive Owen segue. To digress from Closer for a while.
Yes.
I recently read an interview with Bert and Bertie, who were the showrunners slash directors of Hawkeye.
Uh-huh.
And they were asked about the car chase in episode 3,
Yeah.
the one that is reminiscent of Children of Men.
Yeah.
And then they said like, no, we've never seen Children of Men. That wasn't the
Oh
inspiration for it.
no. So did they name
Like
an inspiration for it?
they did. It was the opening scene in Waves.
Oh.
You know, the one where they were
Yeah.
traveling through the highway and the camera goes around the car over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was such a like it made me very happy like that they name drop Waves, because I really love Waves and we've reviewed that also.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a whole side note. Sorry, back to Closer.
Yes. Yeah, while we're talking about like Closer kind of being the template, right, for all anti-Valentines that come after it, Jude
Mhm.
Law went on to play like several Dan-like characters over the
Mm.
course of his career,
He
going
got kind
forward.
of typecast here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of crazy. What was that one about him being the limo driver? Uh
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I
Elfie? Is
can't
it
think
called
about it.
Elfie?
Elfie.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep.
Right? Which was like basically it's the same character. And it's kind of nuts that he
Hmm.
did a whole series about that. Um yeah,
Mm.
but Natalie Portman, great performance. Julia Roberts, like a bit of a different kind of outing for her, character wise as well.
Yeah, speaking of shedding the stereotypes, Julia Roberts definitely shed her Pretty
Oh
Woman
yeah.
rom-com stereotype here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the actors here, the big four here, I think particularly chose these roles because they didn't want to be playing good guys anymore.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to show like a bit of like itch to them that they can play like anti-heroes too.
Yeah, yeah. I think definitely true for Roberts and for Portman. For sure.
Mm.
What was Jude Law doing before that? Let me see.
A bunch of stuff he was in, like the
Oh, you
talented
know what?
Mr.
I'm wrong.
Ripley, AI.
Elfie came up the same year as Closer,
Oh wow, okay, okay.
and then he plays Errol Flynn in The Aviator, which is again the same kind of role. Um.
That's right. That's right. If you've seen The Young Pope,
Oh,
also quite actually weirdly quite similar as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah,
man, fascinating. Okay.
yeah. Also, if you haven't seen The Nick, which is a great Steven Soderbergh medical drama set in the 1900s, starring Clive Owen, you should, because it's very good as
I
well.
have not. Let me make a note of that.
It's very good. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's only 2 seasons. It was on Cinemax, which is like the least heralded of any network. And Clive Owen gave a great performance in that is very wasted. He plays like this very cutting edge surgeon in the 1900s, like 1905 or 1906, something like that.
Mhm.
And then it's soundtrack to this very like techno futuristic score.
Fascinating.
Despite the fact that it's in the 1900s, because the surgical methods that he's pioneering are cutting edge for the time, like very futuristic lah. Like
Interesting.
heart transplants and stuff like that. Like things that have never been done that he is doing. So it made it seem very futuristic, although the setting was in the 1900s. So
Fascinating.
yeah.
That reminds me a bit of, oh no, what was that anime called? Black. No, not Black Butler. Yeah, I'll talk about it whenever I remember that. But yes,
All
cool. I
right.
put it on
Yeah.
my list of things to check out. Yeah.
Awesome. And that was our four anti-Valentine's films. Alongside a few notable mentions that we think you should check out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is very early in February to give our February recommendation. So I don't know whether Isa has anything. Um, for me in particular, like I have the advantage of like watching
Oh yeah,
things
ahead of time.
prior
Mm-hmm.
ahead of time, so I can give some recommendations.
Go
But
for it.
in February, let's begin with you. Like, have you seen anything that you want to recommend or shout out for this
Ooh,
month?
not really. I've just kind of been like trying to catch up on stuff that
Mm-hmm.
was in January that we recommended that I haven't quite finished yet. So I don't
Sure.
have
Okay.
anything off the top of my head. So you can go ahead and go first.
All right. Coming out at the end of January, but still showing now, and will be opening next week at the Asian Film
Mm-hmm.
Archives. But you can watch it on Amazon Prime. It's an Iranian film called A Hero, which is just fantastic.
Ooh.
Um, it is a film about this guy who's in jail because he owes someone a debt. That's what happens in Iran. Like if you owe someone a lot of
Yeah.
money and you can't pay it back, you're sentenced to like a certain amount of time in jail if you cannot pay it back.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets out of jail for a couple of days for compassionate leave. Someone in his family has passed away, so he's going to the funeral, right? He encounters a bag of money, like a bag of gold coins.
Mm.
He takes the bag of gold coins. He wants to sell it and repay his debt so he can get out of jail. But at the last moment, he changes his mind. He can't do it. So he puts out ads to return the money, to return the purse to whoever lost it.
Uh-huh.
Someone comes forward, takes back the bag, and then people hear about this. Like he becomes a sort of social media cult hero. Oh, this guy in prison is so honest. He could have paid back his own debt, but then like he returned the money. So he becomes this sort of cult hero. He appears on social media, on YouTube shows, on news shows, in newspaper clippings. He becomes like the talk of the town.
Mm-hmm.
And then social media digs into his past, and then they find that he has done some very unethical things in the past,
Yeah.
and then they start to claim that, oh, he made up the story about returning the bag. Like he just did it for the publicity. Like this never actually happened, and because he never took the name and number of the person he returned it to,
Oh.
everybody thinks he's lying.
Mm-hmm.
This is the ultimate story of like no good deed goes
Mm-hmm.
unpunished, kind of. And also the modern trend of like you see someone do something good on social media and then there's this immediate urge to tear them down by finding all the bad things they've ever done before in their life. Like it's weird. It's really current right now because you see a lot of that lah. A lot of people who've done good things on social media, and then you find out things about their past, and then suddenly you're like, oh, now this is a bad person. But not really. They're complicated persons. They've done good things and bad things. It's a great look into Iranian society and social media in general in society anywhere around the world. Coming out this
Mm-hmm.
week on all cinemas is Spencer, which is a biopic about Princess Diana of
Yeah.
Wales. She's played by Kristen Stewart, who gives an Oscar-worthy performance here, and I would be quite upset if she doesn't win the Oscar for Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most. If you think you've seen the story in The Crown season 4, you have not. Spencer is, for the most part, loosely based on realism.
Uh-huh.
This is a very magic realist fable about a particular weekend for Diana in the House of Windsor.
Interesting.
Over the Christmas weekend, there are ghosts, and stuff like that. I mean, it's all in her head, lah. But it plays out very much as a magic realist fable, not so much as a real life biopic of Princess Diana. It's fantastic. She's haunted by the specter of Anne Boleyn here in uh, this film. And if you know the history of Anne Boleyn, you probably understand why Diana relates to her.
Yeah.
The best film out right now on HBO Max, though, one of the best films of the year, and I think will end up being in my top three,
Oh.
is a movie called The Fallout, which I don't see falling out of my favorites anytime soon. The Fallout is it stars Jenny Ortega, who is you may remember from You season 2. She played the girl Ellie.
Ah.
And this girl called Manny Ziegler. The Fallout is about the aftermath of a school shooting, and it is one of those Gen Z portraits that is not sensationalized or dramatized in the way that Euphoria is, or
Mm-hmm.
Sex Education, or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Part of its heartbreaking nature and is authenticity. Like it portrays Gen Z in the most real way I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not Euphoria, like, is what I'm saying. So it's hard to it's hard to explain how it unpacks trauma,
Yeah.
or PTSD, without watching it, because it does it in such a nuanced and subtle way. Yeah, definitely check it out. The Fallout is one of my favorites of the year.
Interesting. Phineas did the soundtrack.
Coming,
Oh, sorry.
yes, yeah,
Phineas did the
yeah,
soundtrack.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, soundtrack. Very, very good. Um, there is also one other film coming out next week called Parallel Mothers, which is the new film from Pedro Almodovar.
Ooh.
It is also very good. Yes, I like this a lot. Parallel Mothers is coming out on the 17th of Feb in
Okay.
Singapore
Definitely
cinemas,
putting that down.
particularly in Shaw theaters and the projectors. So yeah, definitely highlighting that the marvelous Mrs. Maisel is back for season
Mhm.
4 at the end of the month. I've seen the first 3 episodes. It is very good. What else? Okay, Severance. I'll talk about in April. It's my favorite show of the year so far. I don't think I've mentioned Somebody Somewhere, which is my favorite new show of the year so far.
Uh-huh.
Not counting Station 11, which is technically a 2021
Yeah.
show. Somebody Somewhere is a very One Mississippi esque show,
Oh.
and I really really love it. It's about this girl named Sam who is just very. She's in her 40s and she's aimless and she doesn't know what to do,
Mhm.
and then she makes a gay friend and decides to sing in a choir. Yeah, there's really nothing plot wise going on, but it's such a great portrait of an unconfident, aimless woman,
Yeah.
that feels very relatable to anyone who's ever felt aimless and unconfident. Yeah, that's all my recommendations for the month of February. And also shout out, I spent my Sunday watching the whole first season plus the special plus the 2 movies of Violet Evergarden, which I finally
Oh
watched.
yeah.
Yeah, really really great. Finally got the hype.
Yep. Yep. It takes a while.
Very
It
I
takes a while.
it does take a while. I must say I didn't like the. I thought the second film was very good, but I thought it could have been edited better.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I really loved
This
it, lah. I think he had
the
too many
the
flashbacks.
second half felt a bit convoluted. And I'm wondering
Mm.
if it's because like they were needed to I don't know. There was something about the kind of no spoilers for anyone, but like the kind of resolution that they were trying to that didn't have its enough weight on its own, that it required a lot more help for us
Mm.
just to kind of fill in. But yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely see your point for that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. It also had this very like Matrix Resurrections vibe where it spent like half the film like showing you flashbacks of things you saw in the
Yeah,
series, which I thought were very unnecessary. Like it's a very anime style of hand holding like that I don't like.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
And I thought Violet Evergarden was better than that. And it was in the first movie, but apparently in the second movie it wasn't.
Yeah, the first movie was.
But I suppose the second movie
Mhm.
very good. I liked it. Eternity and Auto Memory
Yes,
Dolls
love that.
was very good. I like that more than the second
Mm.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I suppose the second one came out so long after the series that perhaps
It
they were worried that people may not
yeah,
remember.
and also because I think for anime movies in general, that a lot of the time they expect new audiences to only come to see the film, right?
I
Based
suppose
upon
you're
the
right,
hype.
lah.
And that's part and parcel thing. Like we get it with any sort of like big anime movie that comes in, right? When there's a very popular franchise, you have the fans that come in, and then those fans will bring friends.
Mm-hmm.
As kind of like a communal experience. So I'm guessing that's why it almost always happens.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely especially for you, if you binged it, like totally not
Mm.
necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, do keep your eye out and watch the Fallout, which is my number one recommendation.
Yes.
Number two recommendation is Parallel Mothers by Pedro Almodovar, which I'll be watching again next week.
Yeah.
And also shout out to A Hero from Iran and Spencer, which may not be a perfect movie, but features a perfect performance by
Mm,
someone who I did not think was as good as Robert Pattinson, but I now think is as good as Robert Pattinson.
fascinating.
Kristen Stewart. Yeah, it's amazing that the Twilight duo have become like indie darlings in
Yeah.
the 2010s. Yeah, great. Good for them, lah. Good for Kristen Stewart. I'm sorry I doubted you. Yeah, and that is it for this episode of Behold. We will be back in a few weeks for a new episode of Genre
Yep.
Equality where we'll be talking about what are we talking about for Genre
We're talking
Equality?
about Batman. Oh no, no, no. That's we are talking about Book of Boba Fett.
Book of Boba Fett is about to end tomorrow, actually, as
Yes.
of this recording.
Uh
As well as Peacemaker, The Legend of Vox Machina. I saw we'll be talking about Demon Slayer in the entertainment
Yes,
district
I
arc,
will.
which I'm also watching, so I might chime in there
Yes.
as well. I'll be talking about the Return of Saga, which is one of the most popular comic books of modern memory.
Yes.
It's back after a 3.5 year hiatus. Man, about time Brian came on, and I'll be talking about a new book I read called 13 Stories, as well as season 2 of Raised by
Mhm.
Wolves, Roland Emmerich's ridiculous film where the moon falls onto the earth called Moonfall, and a new K drama zombie thing called All of Us Are
I
Dead,
I
which
caught
is
I caught
okay.
that too. I've yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when it comes out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay
Yeah.
lah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Till next time though, this has been
I'm
Hitzer.
Isa.
Goodbye
Ciao.
guys.